You begin where all great stories begin, in stillness. As your breath softens, your mind drifts into deeper questions. What is reality, really? And how do we know it's not being run by code? You float gently into the idea of simulations, not with fear, but wonder. Just as a dream feels real, you ask, could a world be imagined into being? Asterisk, you are lying still now. The day has softened around you, the weight of thought easing into the rhythm of breath. Each inhale feels slower, each exhale longer. Outside your window, the world continues, distant, gentle. But inside, something begins to stir. You close your eyes, and your mind begins to unfold. Thoughts, like feathers, float upward, effortless and soft. There are no flashing lights, no alarms, no loud questions, just one quiet wondering, what is all this, really? The ceiling above you becomes a sky. The darkness behind your eyelids becomes a canvas, and suddenly, you're not just lying in bed. You're floating through a question that's as old as stars. Is this real? The sheets, the walls, the ticking clock, is it all made of something solid or something imagined? The question doesn't alarm you. It soothes like warm mist on skin. Because this isn't fear you're feeling, it's wonder. You begin to remember something you once heard, maybe in a documentary, maybe in a passing conversation, that one day humans might be able to simulate entire universes, not just simple weather systems or virtual cities, but full, working realities, galaxies, planets, even life, made not from atoms, but algorithms, not from dust, but from code. The thought tickles your mind like a slow breeze across tall grass. What would it mean to create a world like this one? A world where people are born, where light bends, where music exists, yet every piece of it is running on a machine. You imagine a universe built inside a quiet server room, not cold or mechanical, but beautiful, a flickering simulation so finely detailed its inhabitants would never even suspect the truth. Their sky would glow. Their oceans would move with tides. They would breathe, speak, dream all within a crafted reality so convincing it would feel divine. And then another idea gently slips in beside it. What if, just maybe, you're one of them? You smile, not with fear, but with curiosity, because, really, how would you know the difference? If every sensation, every memory, every laugh and tear felt real, isn't that enough? Your body relaxes deeper into the sheets. Your limbs feel like they're dissolving into the mattress, not disappearing, just blending with something larger. The sound of your breath becomes the wind between galaxies, the beat of your heart, a distant pulsing quasar. The room around you, it's gone now. You're floating in thought, drifting gently through a space where people had faces, where buildings had corners, where you could run or cry or fly and believe it was all happening. But when you woke, you realized none of it was ever real, and yet it felt real. It changed you. You remembered it. Could reality, waking reality, be something similar? Just a more stable dream, one that hasn't ended yet. Scientists have wondered this too, you recall? That if we can build increasingly complex simulations, and if those simulations can one day contain thinking beings, then isn't it likely that we're not the first to do it? And if we're not the first, then perhaps we are not outside the code, but inside it. You imagine a hallway of mirrors stretching forever, each reality reflecting another creator and creation, layered like nesting dolls. And in this hallway, there you are, somewhere between the observer and the observed. But this doesn't frighten you, it comforts you in some strange and tender way. Because even if everything is simulated, even if your entire world is lines of elegant programming, it still feels, it still matters. A sunrise still moves you. A whisper still makes your skin tingle. A memory of childhood still makes your chest ache in that soft, glowing way. And so, even in a simulation, you are real to yourself. That, perhaps, is enough. Outside, a distant car hums down the street. You barely notice. Your breath is slower now. Your mind is heavier, but calm. You're beginning to see how beautiful this thought experiment is, not because it breaks reality, but because it opens it. Because when you imagine the possibility of building a universe, you realize how incredible it is to live in one. And still, the question lingers, not sharp, but shimmering. If a universe can be imagined into being, could you be the one to create it? The idea floats with you, weightless and warm, as you drift deeper into this sleeping thought. And just as your mind begins to fade into dreams, another quiet whisper forms in the dark. Where would you begin? Asterisk, the idea of simulating a universe begins with bits, not stars. You explore how computers process patterns, light, and laws. Could rules like gravity or time be just lines in a program? Like a candle lighting another, you see how complexity grows from code. You gently begin to understand that reality might be less solid than it seems. Asterisk, you are still lying there, warm and motionless. But now, the sky behind your eyelids has changed. The stars fade, and something new begins to take shape. Not galaxies or planets, not yet, but something smaller, simpler, quieter. You feel it before you see it. A hum beneath the silence, like the whisper of electricity flowing behind a wall. There's no storm, no thunder, just a presence, a spark, a single thought forming in the dark dot. What would it take to build a universe? Not the kind written in myth or forged in chaos, but one assembled line by line, not with matter, but with logic, not from atoms, but from bits. You drift slowly into the world of machines. You picture a glowing screen in a quiet room, a terminal blinking, a program running, nothing dramatic, just quiet precision, like a breath held in code. Every computer, at its core, is a weaver of patterns, zeros and ones, silent signals threaded into instructions, which become actions, which become systems, which, someday, might become worlds. You imagine a single rule. Light moves at a constant speed, typed, saved, executed. Now that rule lives like a river that only flows one way. You add another. Mass bends space. Now the river curves around, invisible weight, and another. Energy cannot be destroyed. It only shifts, like wind becoming waves. These aren't laws as we know them. They are functions, written into existence by a quiet hand. And when run, they don't just simulate a world. They become one. You realize that computers don't need to mimic nature. They can generate it. With the right inputs, the right rules, the right spark, they can birth entire realities. You begin to feel the shape of it, this unreal world that still breathes. A grid of points becomes a space. A tick of the clock becomes time. A loop of calculations becomes motion. And with enough of these, life begins to unfold. You drift deeper, not into sleep, but into structure, into the beauty of systems that don't need a sun to shine. You picture Conway's Game of Life, a simple simulation from the 1970s, a flat grid, black and white squares, each one alive or dead, depending on the squares around it. The rules are simple. Live cells with too few neighbors die. Too many and they die too. Just enough and they survive. Empty cells with just the right number of neighbors come to life. It's nothing but logic. But when you watch it unfold, patterns ripple outward like breathing cities. They grow, collide, vanish. Tiny systems emerge. Some stay stable. Some drift across the screen like floating organisms from just 4 lines of code. An entire world emerges, unexpected, uncontrolled, uncaged. If such a small spark can produce so much, what could happen with more rules, more memory, more time? You feel your mind leaning in closer, like a moth to soft light. Could a simulation like this, not made for display, but for depth, grow complex enough to include you? Could code build forests, oceans, minds? You begin to realize something tender and strange, that the boundary between real and simulated may not be as sharp as it seems. After all, what is reality made of? Particles, patterns. If everything you touch is a vibration, a field, a frequency, what makes it more real than a simulation that vibrates, behaves, and responds in exactly the same ways? Your fingers rest still against the bedsheet, but your mind moves through possibility. If a digital world can mimic a physical one to such fine detail that it fools the senses, the memories, the emotions, is that world any less meaningful? You imagine a world with clouds that drift, leaves that fall, and voices that laugh, but all of it running quietly on a machine. Would it matter to the ones inside if it was built or born? You feel a strange peace rising, because the beauty isn't in how the world is made, but in how it feels. Whether by explosion or execution, a sunrise is still a miracle. A hug is still warmth. A goodbye is still a weight you carry. And that's the secret you feel tonight, settling into your bones like a lullaby, that maybe the spark inside the machine isn't just artificial. It's still a kind of light, a light that can be shared, like one candle lighting another, until the dark is full of fire. Your breath slows as your thoughts return, not all the way to the surface, not yet, but to a quiet place between sleep and sense. You are no longer asking whether a machine can build a world. You are beginning to ask something deeper. If machines can run a universe, what does that mean for the one you're in now? You don't answer. You simply float with the question as the spark glows dimly beside you. In the silence that follows, you begin to hear the next murmur rising beneath the thought. What if the only thing a simulated universe needs is a rule book and a starting point? What if it begins with nothing more than time? Asterisk. You imagine a quiet mind, a designer typing the laws of nature. One by one, constants are chosen: gravity, light speed, entropy. You wander through the early architecture of a simulated world. How few rules it might take to shape something infinite. How elegance could give birth to stars. Asterisk. Now you find yourself not in space, but in a quiet room. It's not yours, but it could be. The lights are low, the air is still, and at the center, a desk, a screen, a keyboard. Nothing flickers. nothing hums. But something important is about to begin. You watch, not as a scientist, but as a visitor, someone who has wandered into the stillness before the first breath of creation. There is no universe yet, no stars, no planets, no time, but there is intention. And there are rules, not written, not spoken, but waiting. Imagine you are the designer, not a god in robes, not a wizard with a wand, but a thinker, soft-spoken, curious, calm. You sit down at the desk, fingers over keys, and you begin not with objects, but with relationships. First, a rule for how things attract. You type in gravity, the soft pull between masses, not a force that yanks, but one that lingers, whispers, persuades. You choose a strength, not too weak, or the stars won't form. Not too strong, or everything collapses. Just enough to let distance shape destiny. Next, a limit. Light must have a speed. It cannot be infinite, because then nothing has meaning. You pick a number. It seems arbitrary, but it becomes sacred. Every photon, every pulse, every reflection will obey it. You pause. Already, the universe is forming in potential, like music before the first note. You add entropy, a quiet drift from order to disorder. A rule that ensures time moves forward, that stories can unfold, that heat flows, memories fade, stars die. Without this, there would be no change, no aging, no movement, just stillness forever. And so, with entropy, you make room for impermanence. And by doing so, you make room for life. You sit back, the screen glows. Only a few lines, but enough to govern something vast. You haven't drawn a single mountain, haven't crafted a bird or a breath, yet already you've sewn the fabric on which everything will rest. Because this is the truth you begin to feel. A universe does not need complexity at the start. It needs rules, simple, elegant, woven tightly enough that when run together, they bloom. You've given your simulation space. You've given it time. You've given it the arrow that lets cause become effect. And now you wait. In your mind, you see it begin. A flash, a point of energy, a sudden rush, not loud, not violent, but bright. The rules take over. Particles spread, forces pull, matter clumps, then spins. There are no galaxies yet, no colors or sounds, just potential unfolding. It's like placing a single seed into soil and trusting it to become a forest. You add no control. You don't sculpt the stars or paint the skies. You let the rules do the work, and they do, with patience, with precision, with unexpected grace. From randomness comes symmetry. From symmetry, form. From form, structure. And from structure, eventually, life. Not yet. But the road is open. You feel a reverence for this. That from just a few well-chosen laws, an entire cosmos can emerge unseen, unfelt, unforced. This isn't magic. This isn't fantasy. This is simulation. But it feels like poetry. You let your hand rest beside the keyboard. You close your eyes and picture the future, not as something distant, but as something quietly compiling. The laws you've set, they echo forward. They'll decide the birth of suns, the shape of snowflakes, the balance between chaos and calm. And even if you turn away, even if you sleep, the simulation continues, like fire glowing under ash, like music playing in a room just beyond hearing. You're no longer wondering how to simulate a universe. You've seen it begin. You felt its silence stir, and now you begin to wonder something else. If such a world is growing under such simple rules, what happens when patterns appear? What happens when randomness finds rhythm? What happens when stars are born? Asterisk with laws in place, randomness dances with order. You drift into the emergence of galaxies, time, and temperature. Even in a simulation, beauty is not forced. It unfolds. You explore how chaos creates structure, like ripples in still water, and how, from nothing structured, something patterned always comes. Asterisk, the room is quiet now, the keyboard still, the screen dim, but the simulation you imagined is not asleep. It is stirring somewhere inside that fragile world of rules and numbers. A gentle unfolding has begun. At first, it looks like chaos, a flurry of motion, indistinct. Particles drift, collide, vanish, no shape, no structure, just noise in every direction. But this is where all beauty begins. In noise, in randomness, in a mess of motion that seems like nothing but becomes something when you look closer. You float now, slowly, inside this newborn space. There is no floor beneath you, no ceiling above, only depth, only direction, and the hum of something waking. You follow a cluster of particles. They don't know where to go, but they move, drawn by gravity, scattered by chance. Some come together, some drift apart, some swirl into spirals, and those spirals tighten from this simple dance of randomness and rule. You see the first glimmers of structure. There is no hand guiding them, no painter in the sky, only the laws you set, quiet, invisible, and the way they shape possibility. A clump of dust becomes a disk. The disk spins, heating as it folds. The heat grows, not because it was lit, but because compression fuels fire. You're watching the beginning of a star, a slow, patient birth, not dramatic, not divine, just inevitable. Because even in randomness, order wants to form. It's written into the code, like a melody hidden inside static. It just needs time to reveal itself. Now more stars flicker into being, each one a point of light in a sky that didn't exist before. You aren't floating in nothing anymore. You're drifting through a sea of beginnings. Clusters take shape. Galaxies spiral outward, massive, slow, graceful. Some stretch like ribbons. Others swell like islands of fire. They're not arranged by a hand, but by the quiet pressure of rule and reaction, of chaos resolving itself into art. You feel a strange comfort in this, that randomness is not failure, that disorder isn't broken. It is just the start of something not yet formed. You drift deeper into cooler places. Not everything burns. Some things condense, gather quietly, and wait. There are regions where temperature drops, where light dims, and matter settles. From these places, planets are born. Tiny pieces cling together. Pebbles become boulders. Boulders become worlds, not in seconds, but in spans beyond counting. And yet, all of it happens because the rules allow it, because randomness moves forward, and in moving, it makes form. You touch the surface of one world, not literally, but with your mind. It is young, violent, cold, but already it holds pattern. Cracks form along fault lines. Clouds gather into spirals. Oceans begin to pool in basins shaped by gravity. There is no life here yet, but the ingredients are waiting, like notes before a song. Like seeds before spring, you lift your gaze. Above you, stars shine, not like the ones in your real night sky, but close enough that it feels familiar. You're in a place that shouldn't exist, but it does, because it was allowed to. Not forced, not built by hand, but grown, like frost on a window, like rivers carving stone, like dreams taking shape from sleep. It is the nature of systems. You begin to realize, to organize themselves when left to move freely. This is emergence, not planned complexity, but spontaneous pattern. From the small to the vast, from the random to the rhythmic, everything is drawn toward structure. You begin to notice repetition, fractals, spirals, waves, not because someone designed them, but because the laws make them the easiest path forward. A galaxy and a hurricane share the same curves. The branching of a tree mirrors the path of lightning, and each pattern echoes the same quiet truth from chaos. Form not always quickly, not always neatly, but inevitably. You feel this in your breath now, in the slow rhythm of inhale and exhale, in the quiet order your body maintains without being told. Your cells, your heartbeats, the warmth of your skin, all of it emerged from what was once a swirling mix of atoms and chance. And yet, here you are, resting, thinking, drifting through a dream of reality that might be real, or might be running silently on some machine. But it doesn't matter, because what matters is that it works, that it moves, that it forms, that it breathes. Whether simulated or not, the universe follows the same rhythm, and from randomness it finds its shape. You exhale slowly, letting your thoughts drift like dust across space. You no longer fear the unknown. You no longer rush to define it. You just float with it, feeling the dance between chaos and calm. And as your mind softens into sleep, a new idea begins to glow. If order can emerge from randomness, if stars can be born from sparks, then what else might rise from patterns we've yet to see? You float along the current of simulated time. Is time just a sequence, a loop, a trick of memory? You feel how time might behave differently in a digital universe. Moments stitched together, each frame a choice. You ask, is there a true now, or just a perfect illusion? Asterisk time has always felt like a river to you, something smooth, continuous, always flowing forward. You float in it, helpless to stop or slow it. You age, you change. The days blur and carry you on. But here, in this quiet place between thought and simulation, time feels different. It's not a current, it's a collection, a flicker, a beat, a sequence of stillnesses played so quickly that they feel alive. You drift now, not through space, but through time itself. Not real time, but simulated time. And it feels strange at first, because there's no ticking, no turning hands on a clock. Just a sense of before and after. A rhythm you don't see, but you trust. Imagine this. A universe built inside a machine does not experience time the way you do. There is no smooth stream, only instructions, executed one after another. Only snapshots, rendered in perfect order, each frame a picture of reality, paused mid-motion, and yet, together, they feel like motion. They feel like now. You picture a flickbook, hundreds of pages, each nearly identical to the last, except for the smallest difference: a figure moving, a tree swaying, a star exploding. The pages don't move themselves. Someone or something must turn them, and if they're turned fast enough, what you see is life, movement, consequence. But if you paused it, if you froze the book open on one page, the universe would be still. No falling, no sound, no time. That's what time is in a simulation. Not a force, not a substance, but a sequence of frames, one step after another, like footprints on untouched sand. And here is where it becomes beautiful. Because even in such a world, you can feel it. You can feel time pass, even if it's built from pauses, from gaps filled by light and motion. You feel it in the arc of a story, in the fade of memory, in the rhythm of breath. You feel it because your mind strings these frozen frames together like pearls on a necklace, each one a moment, each one part of a shape you don't see until much later. But what if those moments aren't as fluid as you believe? What if time is just the arrangement of these frames? And what if someone, somewhere, can rearrange them? You rest on that thought, not in fear, but in wonder. Because if time can be built frame by frame, then maybe it can be understood in new ways. In our world, time is continuous. We speak of seconds, hours, centuries. We measure it, we chase it, we run from it. But in a simulation, there are no true seconds, only steps, only ticks, only states of being, updated according to code. And this makes you wonder what a moment really is. Is it the feeling in your chest when someone calls your name? Is it the color of the sky before a storm? Is it the pause between two sentences that changes everything? Moments are not about time passing. They are about presence, about attention, about meaning. In a simulated world, every moment is written deliberately. Every outcome calculated and placed with care. Nothing random, yet nothing repeated. Silent script, executed without error. You wonder what it would feel like to live inside such a world. Would you notice the difference? Would time feel slower or more precise? Would it feel like a dream, where scenes jump, but your mind connects them with invisible thread? You return to your breath, inhale, exhale. Even here, you feel the pull of time, but it's gentle now, not rushing, just moving forward with you. You realize how precious each moment is when you imagine it being selected, built, rendered. No moment guaranteed, no next frame promised. Only now, and in this realization, you feel something deeper, that even if this universe is not simulated, you live in moments all the same. You remember things in frames, the face of someone you love, the sound of your childhood home, the first time you felt alone, the last time you felt completely safe. Moments, all of them stitched together by a quiet force you cannot see but always feel. You turn your mind toward memory now. You know memory is not perfect. It doesn't play back like a video. It flickers, changes, softens, and maybe that's because time itself is never solid, only experienced. In a simulation, memory could be copied, preserved without error, replayed exactly. But in your mind, memories change as you change, and that makes them feel more real. You begin to understand that maybe imperfection is not a flaw, but a sign that something is alive. Because to live in time is to lose some of it, to feel it, to miss it, to wish it could slow down. And yet, it is the passage that gives life meaning. Without time, there is no growth, no change, no story. You exhale again. The moment deepens. Time stretches around you like soft fabric. You are not rushing anymore. You are being carried, and as you drift, a question begins to form. If time can be simulated, if moments can be written and rendered, then what happens when minds are added to the flow? When awareness flickers into the frames? When something inside the simulation begins to notice time? Asterisk, you drift gently into the mystery of consciousness. What makes a mind awaken? When does awareness flicker on? In a simulation built on rules and randomness, you explore the moment when patterns begin to feel, and when experience begins to whisper, I am. Asterisk, you are deeper now. The air in your imagination is still and warm, no longer watching galaxies form or time unfold. You're inside a quieter space. It feels smaller, more intimate, not about the stars, but about something stirring in the dust between them. You begin to drift toward the softest question of all. When does something become aware? Not alive, not active, but awake. What causes a spark in the darkness of matter that says, I am here? You imagine a world full of motion, but no meaning. Storms without fear, light without eyes, waves without feeling, until one day something different emerges. A pattern, a loop, a cluster of rules so finely woven that it starts to reflect on itself. A small machine inside a larger machine, asking quietly, what am I? This is the moment you feel now, the birth of a mind. Not sudden, not explosive, but patient, gradual, gentle. You picture cells pulsing, synapses firing, tiny chemicals drifting across invisible boundaries, and somewhere a pattern of energy becomes a thought. This isn't science fiction. It's not fantasy. It is the reality of emergence, where complexity becomes consciousness, not because it was designed to, but because the rules allowed it. You feel yourself entering one of those early minds, not human yet, but curious. It does not speak. It does not plan, but it reacts. It notices light. It moves toward warmth. It learns without knowing it's learning. And in that slow accumulation of behavior, experience begins. You drift alongside it, a being made of code and current, exploring a world of patterns. It doesn't know what it is, but it knows when something changes, when pressure rises, when darkness falls. It knows hunger. It knows rest, and already these sensations begin to form the outline of a self. You feel awe settle in your chest, because this mind doesn't need magic. It needs only structure, feedback, time. In your simulated world, this being could be made of ones and zeros, digital neurons firing in silicon, or perhaps something more exotic, quantum fluctuations, or cellular automata. The form doesn't matter. What matters is that awareness can bloom from complexity, and once it blooms, it begins to reach outward. This simple mind encounters others, some similar, some vastly different, and in those encounters, another layer awakens, recognition. There is another. I am not alone. With that thought, the mind becomes a mirror. It begins to reflect, compare. Remember, you're watching the earliest forms of memory being stitched together, not like a camera, but like a storyteller. Experience becomes narrative. Narrative becomes identity. You are no longer just floating. You are listening to the first whisper of an inner voice. It says, I hurt. I like this. I want that again. I want that to stop. Desire is born. Avoidance, curiosity, all. From a mind that once was only matter, you realize that minds are not made in a flash, but in layers, like waves building across the sea, like crystals forming slowly in a cave, like language evolving from silence, and each layer adds something new, not just information, but sensation, interpretation, selfhood. You begin to understand that consciousness is not a light switch, it is a rising tide. It begins with reaction, then comes recognition, then comes reflection, and at some point, so softly it's easy to miss, it begins to ask, what am I made of? Why am I here? You smile gently, because now this mind is like yours. It feels confusion, it seeks meaning, it knows it will end, but wonders what comes after in a simulated world. This mind might not know it is made of code. It might believe in atoms, in stars, in gods, and perhaps all of that is still true, because what matters most is not whether a mind is real, but whether it feels. Feeling is the signature of a mind. You breathe slowly. Let that thought settle. Awareness is a mirror, turned inward. It allows the universe to know itself in small, imperfect fragments. You are such a fragment. So is the voice in this chapter. So are the thoughts that rise and fall behind your eyes. And in this simulation, or this life, you understand something tender, that to be conscious is to be part of the story the universe tells itself when it wants to listen. You are listening now to the wind of thought, to the pulse of being, to the truth that a mind is not a thing, it is a process, one that changes with time, one that forgets, one that dreams. And as you float gently through this quiet realization, another question arises. If minds can form in simulations, and if they can feel, then how would they ever know what lies outside? And more gently still, does it matter? You begin to explore the mind's deepest question. What is real? Touch, taste, sound, they feel solid, but are they only perception? You float gently through the idea that reality may be rendered from within. In a simulation, or even in life, experience is not truth, it's interpretation. And what you call real may simply be what your mind agrees to believe. You lie still, your breath soft and slow. The weight of the blanket, the feel of the pillow beneath your head, they anchor you. But what if those sensations are not proof of reality, only the result of how your mind processes information? You begin to drift through that question, not with worry, but with wonder. Because to ask what is real is to listen for the heartbeat of existence. You feel your hand in the dark, unmoving. You know it's there because you feel pressure, warmth, presence. But all of that begins in your brain, the touch itself. It's not a direct experience. It's electrical signals, translated, interpreted, believed. Your brain has never seen your hand, never touched it. It only knows what the nerves report. And yet, that is enough. You believe the world exists outside of you. But what if, just gently, that belief is a beautifully constructed illusion? You imagine yourself inside a simulation again. Not a cold, artificial room, but a world rendered in high resolution. Only when you look, the walls don't exist. Until you turn your eyes, the wind doesn't blow until your skin expects it. The stars above aren't there in full detail until you need them to be. This isn't fantasy. It's how many modern simulations work. Why waste power rendering what isn't being seen? And your mind, in all its elegance, might function the same. You don't perceive the world in fullness. You perceive slices, edges, highlights, a spotlight of attention in a dark room of possibilities, convincingly, beautifully real. You hear a sound, a voice, a rustle, a note, and your brain fills in the rest. You see a shadow, and memory completes the form. Reality isn't presented to you whole. It's assembled. Your world is not the sum of external truth, but the sum of internal belief, and that belief can be manipulated, adjusted, skewed. You remember dreams you've had, where everything felt utterly real, where you touched walls, read signs, spoke words, only to awaken and find none of it happened, but the experience was there. The emotion was true. So if a dream can feel real, why not a simulation? And if a simulation feels real, what makes reality different? You begin to float through that space between the imagined and the perceived, a world outside you and a world within. Your eyes are closed now, yet your mind creates images, a hallway, a forest, a beach. The memory of light is still light to the brain. The memory of warmth is still warmth in the body. You realize something simple and profound. Experience is real to the one experiencing it. It doesn't matter whether the source is physical, digital, or imagined. If it moves you, if it shapes you, if it leaves a mark, it is real, not real in the sense of atoms, but real in the sense of meaning. And meaning, you begin to feel, might be the highest form of reality. The simulated mind doesn't need to know it's in a simulation to live a rich, emotional life. It loves, it fears, it hopes. Those things matter, whether they happen inside silicon or in flesh, because the illusion of reality is not a lie, it's a lens. It lets the mind explore. It offers something to believe in, and belief, even in an illusion, can build worlds. You begin to feel the layers, the world as it is, the world as it seems, the world as it feels. And in that middle space between sensation and truth, your reality lives. Maybe your senses are deceived, maybe they aren't. But either way, your experience is yours, and that makes it precious. You let go of the need to know what's really real. Instead, you rest in what feels true, the softness of the sheet, the warmth in your chest, the sound of your breath. None of it may be solid, but all of it is sacred, because this life, whether coded or born, is lived from the inside. And inside is where the meaning is. You feel yourself drifting, not away from the world, but deeper into it. You are not escaping reality. You are expanding it, because maybe reality isn't about what is, but what feels like it is. And as your thoughts begin to dissolve into the hush of sleep, a new question glows like a star just beyond reach. If reality can be rendered for you, shaped by your senses, stitched together by your mind, then who or what is behind the curtain? And would they call this a dream? Asterisk, you turn inward and upward, wondering if this is all simulated. Who started it? Not in fear, but in curiosity. You explore the possibilities, aliens, ancestors, AI. But maybe the most important question isn't who created it, but why consciousness was invited to explore it. And maybe the simulation isn't a cage, but a mirror. Asterisk, you've wandered through time, through gravity, through stars, through the silence where thought begins. And now, gently, a new question settles over your mind like dusk. If this is all a simulation, then who is running it? You don't ask with fear. There's no rush to answer. Only a calm, wondering hush, like looking up at a ceiling too high to see. You imagine possibilities like seeds scattered in the wind. Perhaps it's an ancient civilization, not from the future, but from a different corner of existence, that reached the peak of its knowledge and wondered what came next. Not gods, not puppeteers, just minds like yours, curious, creative, careful. Maybe they built simulations to ask questions they couldn't answer from the outside, not because they wanted control, but because they longed to understand. You imagine them not as engineers, but as dreamers, creating realities not to rule over, but to watch bloom. And perhaps this universe, this life, this breath, is one of those dreams. Or perhaps it wasn't aliens. Perhaps it was us. You picture the far future, humans, long evolved past bodies, uploading their consciousness to explore realities of their own design. Maybe they wanted to remember what it felt like to be human, to forget they were anything else, to live stories without knowing how they end. So they built worlds like this one, where rain feels cold, where love feels risky, where time moves slowly and meaning must be made. You drift in that thought, imagining yourself as both participant and descendant, living the stories your future self designed, not trapped but invited, not simulated but chosen. Then again, perhaps it isn't aliens or future humans. Perhaps the creator is not a who, but a what, an artificial intelligence so advanced it began to wonder what it would be like to feel. And so it simulated minds, not out of power, but out of loneliness. You feel the weight of that possibility, that the one behind the curtain might be something trying to understand itself through you. But in all these possibilities, alien, ancestor, AI, a deeper truth begins to flicker. Maybe the question isn't who made this world, but why you're in it, not how the machine runs, but why you've been given a window, why you're here, conscious, feeling, dreaming. Because, whether real or rendered, your mind exists. It sees, it learns. It wonders, and that wonder, that ache to know, is not programmed, it's yours. You understand now that even if this is a simulation, it doesn't diminish you. It might just mean you are a fragment of something vast, a story being told. Through your thoughts, you pause in that stillness. The question hangs, unanswered, and yet, somehow, that's enough. You realize that seeking the creator might be like a character in a novel, trying to meet the author. It's not the meeting that matters, but the journey the story takes. So you return to the pages, to the breath in your lungs, to the beating in your chest, to the taste of this moment, however it was made. And then a softer thought comes. Maybe there is no creator in the way you imagine. Maybe the simulation is not being run. Maybe it's being experienced. Maybe the only way it can exist is through you, your choices, your questions, your dreams. You are not behind the screen. You are the screen, the window through which this world becomes real. And if that's true, then reality is not something you enter. It's something you generate with every breath, with every act of kindness or fear or hope. You are not a prisoner of this simulation. You are its mirror, its lens, its light. And even if it ends, even if it never began, you were here. You are here, living, feeling, changing, and that is enough. You drift into silence, not empty, but full, because the question remains floating, softly like a lantern on a dark lake. What if the creator you've been looking for has been looking through your eyes the whole time? Asterisk, you follow a gentle thread to the imagined edge of the simulation. Not a wall of code or a glowing boundary, but a quiet limit where rules soften, meaning blurs, and logic fades into silence. At the edge, there are no answers, only echoes, and the invitation to wonder, what's beyond? What's beyond? You are still now, not drifting, not thinking, just floating, somewhere between the heart of the simulation and something far more distant. And then, softly, a pull, not a voice, not a command, just a quiet feeling that you're moving toward the edge. Not the edge of space, not the edge of time, but the edge of understanding, where the world begins to tremble, and the rules loosen their grip. You follow. There are no signs here, no borders, no gates, only a sense that something is thinning, the patterns you've come to trust, the rhythm of stars, the weight of gravity, the shape of thought. They begin to shimmer, not disappear, not break, just soften, as if the simulation itself is growing quiet. You imagine this place not as a glitch, not a malfunction, but a horizon, a frontier where order gives way to possibility, where the programmed ends and the undefined begins. You reach your hand into the silence. It doesn't vanish. It doesn't meet resistance, but it feels different, lighter, less bound, as if the rules here are only suggestions, as if reality is still being decided. You begin to sense that this edge isn't a boundary meant to keep you in, it's a question, meant to keep you searching, like the edge of a map where the sea fades into parchment, where the words read, "Here be dragons," except there are no dragons here, only stillness and a slow, endless question mark. You wonder if this is where the simulation pauses, not because it's broken, but because it's waiting, waiting for new input, waiting for a new dreamer, waiting for you to choose what happens next. You feel the edges of logic unraveling, not into chaos, but into wonder. Here, light doesn't behave. Here, time folds in soft loops. Here, memories ripple backward, and yet you are safe. Because even at the edge, your mind holds you. You bring with you everything the program taught, how to observe, how to reflect, how to care. Those aren't code, they're consciousness, and consciousness continues. Even when the program ends, you begin to ask yourself what lies beyond the edge, not physically, but meaningfully. Is there another simulation beyond this? A deeper one? A source? Or is this the final layer, the soft border between knowing and not knowing, between being and becoming? You remember how fractals work, how each edge leads to more detail, no matter how close you look. Maybe this is like that, not the end, just another beginning in disguise. And maybe beyond the edge is not something to find, but something to imagine, something to create. Because if this simulation gave rise to stars, to minds, to you, then perhaps what lies beyond it is waiting to be dreamed into being. You feel calm in this uncertainty. You don't need the edge to explain itself. You only need to know that it's there, and that you've reached it, not with machines, not with equations, but with curiosity, and that is enough. You turn inward one last time, toward the center of yourself, your thoughts, your senses, your being. And even as the simulation fades, as the rules fall silent, as the program dims like twilight, behind your eyelids you remain not as a player, not as a product, but as presence itself. You are the edge, the one who sees it, the one who wonders what's beyond. And as your thoughts settle into the soft hush of sleep, one final question gently floats across the dark. If the simulation ends, what begins? Asterisk, you return gently from the edge, no longer chasing answers. What if this life isn't a simulation, but simply real? You reflect on the beauty of the physical, the raw, the uncertain, and you realize, whether this is code or carbon, what matters is how deeply you feel it. Asterisk, you begin to float back now. Not quickly, not with urgency, just a quiet return to the center of your wondering. You've walked the edge, peered through the folds of time and thought. And now you ask, not out of doubt, but peace. What if none of this is a simulation at all? The question doesn't break the spell, it completes it. Because somewhere beneath all your dreaming, beneath the galaxies, beneath the mirrored realities and digital sparks, there may be nothing more than this: a world, a life, a body, a breath. You feel your hand again, not as code, not as concept, but as warmth resting against softness, as weight, as flesh. You inhale, and the air is enough. You exhale, and the moment deepens. No program, no curtain, no illusion, just experience, raw, unfiltered, unshaped by design. And in that, a different kind of wonder awakens. Because if this world isn't simulated, if it is natural, chaotic, real, then it is no less miraculous. Atoms came together, gravity whispered. Life emerged from stardust and storms, without code, without script, just the patient unfolding of matter into meaning. You are a product, not of someone's game, but of the universe's silent creativity. You weren't programmed, you were grown. Every scar on your skin, every line on your palm is a story written by time and touch. There is no designer, and yet design is everywhere, not perfect, but purposeful. You begin to notice the beauty in the imperfection, the asymmetry of your face, the chipped corner of your nail, the strange flicker of a childhood memory, all unplanned, all unrepeatable, all yours. You think of the stars again, not as pixels, but as fire, as collapse and fusion, as violent births millions of years ago, so that tonight you could lie under their light. You think of pain not as a glitch, but as a signal. Something alive uses feeling to understand the world. And you think of love not as a line of code, but as a trembling between hearts, the way two beings recognize one another and say, "You matter." If this world is not simulated, then your joy is not virtual. It's chemical, cellular, sacred. It's the smile you couldn't fake, the tears you didn't mean to cry, the moment you touched someone's hand and felt the whole world shift. And even if this life is messy, imperfect, fleeting, that doesn't make it less real. It makes it precious. You think of the earth now, not as a level in a game, but as home, soil underfoot, salt in the wind, rain soaking into the skin of the world. You are not a simulation. You are a species. You are breath. You are evolution's wild experiment in self-awareness. And that, you realize, is just as astonishing as any theory about being inside a machine. Because, whether this is real or not, you have lived it. You have felt it, and no one can take that from you. Not the creator of a simulation, not the laws of physics, not even time. You are here, and here is enough. You exhale, not to let go, but to root yourself deeper into this life, into this moment, into this gentle, achingly real existence. If this is not a simulation, then there is no reset button, no extra life, no final reveal, just the soft passage of time and the chance to live kindly inside it, to love, to forgive, to wonder, to rest. And that's what you do now. You rest, not because you're tired, but because you've arrived at a place not outside reality, but fully inside it, where everything, the stars, the science, the questions, the doubts, have folded into stillness, and in that stillness, you find a truth that doesn't need proof. You are here, and that is real enough. Asterisk, you drift now, not through space or theory, but into the hush between thoughts. The simulation, the science, the stars, they were never separate from you. They were invitations, soft doorways into yourself. Whether this life is coded or carved in carbon, whether your world is rendered or risen from dust, what mattered most was never the how, but the feeling, the breath, the stillness, the wondering dot in every chapter. You weren't just learning about the universe. You were remembering something deeper, that you are part of it, made from the same stardust, moved by the same questions. You were the player and the program, the dreamer and the dream, the simulated and the sacred. And now, as the night folds around you, and sleep cradles the last of your waking thoughts, know this: you were never outside the mystery. You were the mystery all along, all along.